The guy from Buffalo Trace comes up and he walks in and sees it and turns white as a ghost. I'll never, ever forget the look on his face.
Welcome to the Disgruntled PM Podcast, your weekly therapy session for the chaotic world of project management, transforming daily frustrations into real action.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Trevor, joined again for part 2 of our special interview with Sheriff Pat Melton. Now, in part 1, the sheriff told us a little bit about his background in law enforcement, and he told us how he stumbled into the world-renowned case known as Pappygate back in 2013, where he took a report for about $23,000 worth of stolen bourbon, and then that took them down a path of 2 years of investigations. The case got hot. The case got cold twice. And then they got a suspect, Toby Kurtzinger. And once they got their suspect, they started pulling on more threads and found steroids, bourbon. It was a Commonwealth-wide investigation because Kentucky is a Commonwealth and not a state. So, well, it's everybody, it's a very commonly misspoken thing that Kentucky is a state and not a Commonwealth. So, sheriff and his team started doing all the research, started doing the risk analysis to figure out how they would legally catch these people and make sure that they got everything right. And then that led us into the controlled buy that him and his team performed. And I'll let the sheriff pick it up from there.
So after we did this controlled delivery with the postal inspection service, we seized phones and all this. And then Attorney General Conway, his cyber folks did the phone for us, all our phones in this case. So we were able to get them back pretty quick and expedient. So as this kept going and we had people turning in barrels of bourbon and all those things, we finally, after we get to a point that we feel like you can only get so many barrels of bourbon, we finally get to a point that we think that, well, it's time to go on and announce. And we recovered bourbon barrels out of 6 counties. We got statements from the people that turned it into us. And then from those folks, they wrote statements who they got it from, which tied the organization together. And I mentioned that cloud-based group that we were looking at suspects and how to tie everything together. Well, that even helped us more, and even more in that softball team that Toby played with. And once how much bourbon do you have to collect to know that you got it? And when's enough's enough? How much more time do we need to invest in this? Do we have enough to move forward? Do we have enough to prosecute? Are we ready to go? All those things. One of the neat things before that happened was we had one of the master distillers from Buffalo Trace come to the office. And our office, the evidence room smelled really, really good for a while. Just saying. Yeah. And, they came, and then one of them from Wild Turkey came over, and I'll never forget the guy from Wild Turkey. He came in and drilled one of the barrels, and, he drilled it, took a sample, he smelled it, saw it, and said, "That's Wild Turkey 101. One of the most amazing things that I ever saw. To me, that was I thought it was incredible that they knew that by the color, by the odor. He knew. I mean, he knew 100%. And, it truly was remarkable. And then one of the other stories, when we're getting ready to release, one of the other neat things that happened during all this was we're getting ready to have a press conference, say, here's who we got, here's what's going on. We're getting ready to, we're going to present this case, da, 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 da. And all of a sudden we get a stainless steel barrel that comes in. And I'll never, ever forget the guy from Buffalo Trace comes up and he walks in and sees it and turns white as a ghost. I'll never, ever forget the look on his face because we're trying to figure out what it is. And, wound up through the investigation, there were 7 of those missing that had Eagle Rare 17 in them. Big money, as well as the wild turkey. I mean, you figure $5,000 or $6,000 a barrel at a minimum on the wild turkey 101. And we think we had one of the barrels of Weller, and then the 28 bottles of Pappy. Well, Pappy on the secondary market right now is phenomenal. The price right now is remarkable, up to $10,000 for a 23-year-old bottle of Pappy. So, you know, when he walked into the evidence room or where we had all that stored and secured, I'll never ever forget the look on his face. That was 2 things that I'll never forget as long as I live, as far as this case that I thought was unique. Besides my big dumb butt saying, "We're going to solve this case. You better turn yourself in." You know, that
So,
that was, the highlights of that. But
so
I
do you
learned.
have
Go
do you
ahead,
have
Trevor.
an estimate on how much you think your evidence room that you had everything collected in, what that was worth both on the wholesale side and then the what it would have been on the retail side to
Well, I
give
mean,
our audience
retail
a scope
retail
of,
side on secondary market,
well, even primary, just
hundreds
go.
of thousands of dollars on the secondary market, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then on the retail market, just for face value prices, you've got 28 bottles of Pappy Van Winkle, the different vintages, and that could range from 150 to $225 a bottle, and then 28 barrels of bourbon. You figure that's $150,000 or so, and again, that's by the time you take however long it's aged, obviously it loses some of it, and so you wind up with maybe 40, 42, 45 gallons of bourbon that you're packaging, and then the stainless steel barrel, and then the um, uh, 21 wooden barrels plus the other 5 that we had gotten. So I mean, you're looking at probably retail at face amount what you can buy
Yeah.
if you're lucky to find it in a store. You're probably looking at 225,000 dollars. But on the secondary market, that's where it goes. The secondary market it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and of course, and of course, they were selling it for cash, and a lot of people were able to get the Pappy, as hard as it was to get. They were able to get it pretty cheap.
And they
So
were making it harder for everyone else to get
because there's hey, a
there's less
23-year-old
on the market.
bourbon, it took 23 years to make it. It ain't
Exactly.
like tomorrow you say, "Oh, well, here's some 23-year-old bourbon, and it was made yesterday." You can't do that. So it's got to age right in the rick houses. And
And
so,
thinking about that when you're talking about it, you said, for the uninitiated of bourbon, you age a bit, you age it, and then some of it disappears, which is called the angel share. And then you start thinking about, let's say, a 55 gallon barrel of Pappy turns into what, about 40 gallons by the time it's ready to harvest.
yeah, depending on
And then you
depending on the
take
age.
and then you take half of that and put it on, we'll call it the black market. That means out of that 55 gallons that started, you're now looking at roughly 20 gallons going to retail. So you're not only shorting the company and everybody else, you're shorting the public who wants to go buy it. So it's, well,
Yeah,
now, and then you take that one step further and think about the opportunity cost, because it was Buffalo Trace, all of these Buffalo Trace, Pappy Van Winkle, Eagle Rare, all these companies, or all of these bourbons, were owned by a major company by the name of Sazerac. So now, if I go into the store and I can't get Pappy and it's supposed to be there, am I going to a competitor that's not a Sazerac product which means the opportunity cost is now lost financially of the company. So, so we talk about dependencies and downstream effects. It wasn't just I couldn't get my pappy if I could find it. It was opportunity cost and real world effects financially to these companies, and also reputations, because if something something is said to be allegedly at a store and then it's not there, it doesn't exist. And going back to the sheriff's point about, I can't remember if you said this on camera or off camera, but people were saying you were hogging the limelight for media. It's kind of the opposite effect here of people could be saying they're artificially creating demand for the product when the product isn't even there to create the demand for.
Exactly. And that's the thing. 23 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 18 years, 19. You can't pre-plan and look ahead and say, we're going to do this. And that's the thing. So not only the initial theft and the cost of that, but also the big picture and down the road as far as, you know, having enough or having, and they're selling all they can sell. I mean, right now they're selling everything they can sell. Bourbon can only be made in Kentucky. And I believe 98% of the world's bourbon comes from Kentucky. And it's because of the limestone and the water, that it's made here. And, we've got Buffalo Trace is the oldest distillery in North America. So that's
I
a,
didn't know that.
yeah, it's a big deal. Um, and again, the employees there, phenomenal, good
I know.
generational people. Freddie
I
Johnson
know
from
people
down
that work
there,
there.
he's awesome. I mean, Freddie is the ambassador for Buffalo Trace, and is just a great guy. He's a friend, and it's neat to see Buffalo Trace do so well. I met Julian Van Winkle and his grandson, both super, or his son, both super good people. Very caring, very giving. Right now you can see a bunch of flights for sale for different charities. Huge. And so thrilled to see them do that. But that's what makes them so unique, and that bourbon brand so attractive, is because they do a lot for a lot of people. Um, it like our Humane Society here has a huge raffle going right now for their new facility, and they've got a full flight of Pappy that they're raffling $100 a ticket, and there's only 300 tickets being sold. And but there's several other flights, whole flights too, of different things. So like the Blantons and the different types, Eagle Rare, and the Wellers and the different colors of Wellers. I mean, it's pretty cool that how giving they are to this community, and I think that's significant. I think people need to know that worldwide. It's not just a business. They're part of the community here, as well as is the employees that live and work here and do such a great job. But they're very giving um, in our community, and all over the state and all over the country.
Yeah. I know people personally too that work for Sazerac and Buffalo Trace and all those companies. And I'll echo exactly what he said personally, that I know a bunch of them.
Yeah, they're awesome. They're amazing.
So sorry for the sidetrack.
You're good.
Continue about the evidence room.
So the evidence room, when those two things happened, I thought they were significant to mention. Um, so we start looking again after that happened. We start looking again for more of the stainless barrels. And once we find out a little more on that, so we delayed a press conference. And then once we have a press conference, we announce more. And the guys thought it'd be funny. Said, "Oh yeah, we were going to drop a light bulb and act like we broke one of those bottles." Said, "Oh my God, please don't do that. That's not funny. Stop." you know. And so we have the press conference about it, and based on our investigation and all the things, and we're in there, and the room's full. I mean, it's packed. I'll never forget, and very proud of the job my men and women did that we solved that case, because a lot of people thought it was a publicity stunt, and it really truly wasn't. It was a real theft. It was a real case. Our men and women did a great job investigating that. Our office staff, I mean, they were just phenomenal. Very humbling to lead that group of men and women to do the caliber of work that they did. Also, our Commonwealth's attorney, the AG's office, the AG's folks that helped us decipher the phones and go through those. How we tied everybody together with that. There's some myths out there. One of the guys was granted immunity, and they're like, oh, well, he's the one that did it all. Well, no, they didn't. Our mistake was thinking it was a one-time theft, and instead this was a pattern of behavior, and this group of people had been stealing multiple cases for periods of time that we can trace back and document that we know. So, that was a mistake we made. Uh, not knowing that it was over the case of or course of several years, not just then, but you know, it shouldn't be happening now. And you know, we got everybody. We indicted 9 people in that case. As we went through the court stuff, here's an interesting piece of the puzzle. So back to Toby's house when we got that initial tip, and it was an anonymous tip. Um, but when we went
Now,
back,
did that come through the tip phone?
that come through the text to tip phone, 06 area code 502. I believe it's still an active phone with the current sheriff. But with that said, the interesting thing was they filed a motion. I said we wanted to make sure that we dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we had it this way, and this way. Well, there's a motion here that they filed. His defense attorney, Whitney Lawson, who is an amazing attorney. She is, I mean, she's awesome, and she's good people. Uh, I say a pit bull in the kindest way. I mean, if something would happen, I want her on my side. I'll tell you that. I promise. That's what I'm saying. Um,
Well, when you have all the money from selling stolen bourbon, you can afford a great attorney.
yeah, yeah. Well, they lived a pretty good lifestyle too, but they filed a motion that we went on their property illegally to verify that before we got the search warrant, which didn't happen. But the funny thing is that outbuilding and where the bourbon was located was not on their property, but it was theirs. So with the PVA records and everything else, obviously that motion got denied. But I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting piece because we were prepared for a lot of things, and starting from the first move, we had to be prepared because it is Franklin County. You never know what's going to happen here, and so we wanted to be prepared in every way and make sure that we're in it to win it, and we were. And I thought that was an interesting thing. But several of the motions, most everybody pled guilty. The one guy that got immunity, he did testify, and he did steal a bunch of it. Uh, but Toby was the ringleader. He was the guy, and he pled guilty, served 30 days, got shock probated. Um, if
Can
it
you
was
explain what that? Can you explain that what that means to the non-law enforcement audience?
shock probation means that you are so shocked at being in jail that it's changed your life, and you're not going to break any more crimes or make any more poor decisions when you get out. And there you go. Um, so that's an interesting thing. But at the end of the day, it was never personal. It was work. I never asked for this case. It was dropped in my lap. Um, you know, very, very proud of the men and women of the sheriff's office. Very proud of the work that we did. A lot of naysayers out there thought that we would never ever solve that case. Uh, especially after me getting up and pointing my finger and saying, "You better turn yourself in now because I'm coming for you." Look, that was one of the dumbest things I've ever done in my life, and I've made some poor choices, but that was dumb. Here I am, 318 pounds, 6 foot. And I mean, I played football. So, I mean, I was, and I'm pointing, looking at this camera saying, we're coming for you. Yeah. Wow. So, ultimately, I had wanted to use the bottles for charity, and so did the Van Winkles. And then as this kept going, it wound up that, and to be quite honest, we wanted to give some to the different charities to help them, but also to help try to recoup some of our costs from our budget, some of it. But we,
Can you, for the audience members who didn't listen to part one where we explained that, can you give a 30-second explanation of why you needed to recover money for your budget?
well, we're a sheriff's office in Kentucky is a fee-based office. So we're on a calendar year. So you start off January 1, and let's say our budget's approved by the fiscal court. So the county judge and the magistrates in our community approve the budget for the sheriff, the clerk, the PVA, and well, the state does PVA. But anyway, with that said, that budget, just because you have, say, $2.3 million, it doesn't mean you have $2.3 million. You don't know that because you make it off commissions from October 15th to November 15th is the bulk of them. And we collect for seven different taxing districts. So that's when you get the bulk of your funds. Now, you got a pretty good idea from year to year. You got a consistent idea, but you never know. Anything could happen. And so as a fee-based office, you basically have 6 weeks to adjust your budget. So like, here's your budget, here's the goalpost, hit it, because it's constantly doing this as you go through the budget process and as you spend money through the year. So you might wind up the last 6 weeks with extra money, or you might be short and you got to cut it, and you got to make some cuts real quick to be able to manage that budget. In my opinion, it's one of the most unfair budget processes being a fee-based office, um, because, and then the politics play into it as well, from the county judge to the magistrates. And if you upset one of them, or they don't agree with your philosophy, everybody has different ideas of what should or shouldn't happen, and can happen. And then you got people that don't have a clue, and they just want to voice their 2% or their 2 cents in it. And they don't have a clue what goes into that process to make those decisions. And so yeah, it would have been nice to be able to do that, but unfortunately, Buffalo Trace was concerned. Mark Brown with Sizerack was concerned that they could have been tampered with. Somebody could have stuck a syringe in one of them and put poison in. And then if somebody
The
would,
steroids.
or steroids, hey,
I
now it's
mean,
a party.
okay, can you exactly a bottle of
Yeah. And
bourbon
I mean,
laced
some
with
of these guys,
steroids?
to be honest, some of these guys, we discussed how big those barrels were, and how much they weigh. I mean, some of these guys, they were huge. I mean, they were all swelled up. Yeah, yeah, they were huge. Sean Searcy, the other guy out of Lawrenceburg, I mean, he was a monster. Toby was big. Now they're not near as big now, but they were big. And then there was, it also involved some Frankfort police officers, a state officer, worked for KSP, and he was very honest and very open, and a great guy.
KSP is Kentucky. KSP
Kentucky
is
State
Kentucky
Police.
State
Yeah,
Police.
we had the acting post commander that signed for the silencer, and then one of their officers was involved with the steroid side, and again, poor decision. He owned it and was very open and honest, and talked to us and told the truth, and I respect that. If I was sheriff today, I'd hire him. I'd hire him tomorrow because he had the integrity to come and be truthful. And that's everything, because that's all you got. Um, yeah. But, with that said, um, I'll never forget, I took a subpoena over because the former officer that was from Frankfort, that had gotten bottles and other things, we went and served I went personally as a sign of respect to the Frankfort Police Chief, Jeff Abrams, who talked bad about me. But anyway, um, I went just out of respect and served a subpoena for information and other things. He's like, "What's this about?" I said, I can't discuss it. I was told not to say a word. This is all I got for you, but I'm here because it was the right thing for me to do. And in one of the documentaries, he was trashing me, and I think he made some very poor comments. Um, but I did the right thing, and I showed respect. And this is the host of politics in Kentucky is Frankfort. from the governor's office all the way to the House and the Senate, and the Secretary of State's
The
office
state,
and auditors.
the
Yeah,
state house, the
it's the
state
state
house, and the
house.
state senate.
Yeah, state house, state senate, Secretary of State, state auditor. All the state offices are here, and this is the home of state government. The Attorney General's office, who was very instrumental at the time in helping us, and the guy that did our phone stuff he did just a phenomenal job. But at the end of the day, it's a political town, and you know that, and I didn't care. I wanted to do the right thing. Um, Toby was providing a service. A great price on some bourbon. If you wanted hard to get bourbon, he was your guy. He was your go-to. And you know, uh, recovering bourbon out of 6 counties was huge. Um, and at the end of the day, it was a remarkable case. Um, didn't ask for it, but it was a remarkable case that came out of the blue on us. And you know, I would have never ever thought. And we had a murder case. We had a murder case, and we solved it in about 8 hours. Um, and I was super proud of that case. And we had another case, and we chased the guy for 3 days till we finally got him, who killed his girlfriend. And you would think those things would have garnered the coverage, and it was nothing like a bourbon case in Kentucky. I mean, it was just incredible. It was an incredible experience for me. I grew, I learned some things. Also, was disappointed in some things, and at the end of the day, your integrity is all you got, and you always do the right thing, and you'll come through. And that's what I always told my men and women: Hey, you guys do the right thing. I'll take care of the rest of it. I got big shoulders. I'm a big guy. I can handle it.
So, what year did this kind of, I don't want to say wrap up because I know that there was all the court proceedings and everything, but this all started with the phone call in October of 2013. When would you say the case was closed, so to speak,
The
before all the
indictment,
legal stuff?
the indictment was filed June 13th of 2016. It's a 15 indictment, and then let's see what else. So I mean, it was over a 3 year long process through all of it. September 23rd of 2016.
And for our video watchers, would you mind sharing some of your documentation you have?
Now this is the indictment right here. That's one of the indictments on Toby, on Gilbert Kurtzinger, and then here's one of the orders from September 23rd, 2016. It's an order on Gilbert Toby Kurtzinger as well, on a motion. And then again, just case files, a lot of case files, a lot of paperwork. But just a phenomenal case. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime. I never ever, I'd like to be known for a lot of things, but I never thought this would be one of them that I'd be known for. I wanted to be known for working hard, going after the bad guys, and a law and order sheriff. And I think we were, with some of the work that we did, especially with when the pill mill stuff was going on real bad. The all those pills. We did two big groups. One was 22, the other was 24 people that we indicted and charged them with engaging in organized crime that was going to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale, and bringing pills back and then distributing them. The Percocets, the Perc 30s.
Was that also while you were sheriff?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We did that
Okay.
2011, 2013, or 2012, the entire time. Yeah.
So these are all going on almost concurrently with your investigation for Pappygate.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had narcotics
And
detectives. Yeah.
so, you know, we talk a lot about, we talked about your work breakdown structure and where your deputy's time was. And you said on part one about how you had to allocate your resources selectively and you had a finite amount of resources. You didn't mention all these other time consuming cases that went along with that, in addition to your day to day stuff. So you're talking multiple major projects running concurrently, all eating away at your budget that you don't even know year to year what you're going to have to spend. You know, and,
Yeah. I mean,
and you've got
The
And you've
average,
got the news media on top of that.
oh yeah, I mean, guys, when I tell you there was a lot, I've never seen so much. And I mean, literally satellite trucks parked outside our office for weeks. And I mean, it just, this case captivated the hearts of America and all across the world, especially people that love bourbon. Because it's less, you nailed it. It's less than that's out there for everybody to have. And yeah, I mean, you nailed it.
So,
Yeah. But I
so
mean, just because we had this case, I still had a sheriff's office to run. We still had taxes to collect. We still answered calls for service. We worked fatals. We had wrecks. We took other theft reports, burglaries, robberies, all those things while this major case is still going. And
so seeing,
management's huge.
I was going to say, so you lived this back in 2013 to 2016, knowing what kind of tech you had, which would, best word would be rudimentary by today's standards
Yes.
for police and you're still actively in law enforcement. So you're still actively on the investigation side without really making this a long drawn out thing. What tool do you think that any tools today would have been beneficial to you back then, or detrimental to you if you had them at your disposal
I, you
like you
know,
have today?
I think technology and let me just be very blunt. Georgetown Police Department here in Kentucky, phenomenal. They sent me to Vegas to drone school. We've got a tactical drone that we can fly in that does audio, video, live feed. If it gets knocked down, I can flip it back up. Um, it can deliver water or a cigarette or something like that. Um, I mean, it's
As long as the total weight is under 55 pounds at lunch.
yeah, we won't do that. But yeah, it's the technology today is so much greater. And I was always on the cutting edge. Like when I first became sheriff, our voicemail was post-it notes stuck to your door when you walked in. When I took over, the evidence room and supply room was the same room. Um, totally, I had Versailles PD come over, their evidence person come over with my evidence person and audit everything before I signed for anything when I took over. So technology is huge today. And when I left that office, we had voice over IP phones. We were the first in county government to get them. Um, yeah. So I mean, updated computers. Our computers wouldn't even run the programs that was going on because everything was so outdated. We were the first in the state to have the mobile data systems in our cars with computers, and we had the Motorola ML900s in our cars, which was state of the art then. Today it's phenomenal, the system and an air card and the difference in technology, from downloading phones to tracking GPS on phones to all the things that you can do right now today versus, you know, 15 years ago. Um, very, very significant when I first started to where we left. I'll never forget, I bought a Dodge Charger and I put push bars on them. Well, and somebody was critical of me because I bought Dodge Charger. Well, what do they need those fast cars for? Well, that became the standard for police cars across America. And then, yeah, yeah, we were one of the first, and they were cheaper than everything else, so I could get a better deal on them. And then why they need that push bar on the front of them? Because we're a rural agency, and if we're out in the county, a deer jumps out in front of us or a big raccoon, it doesn't destroy the front of your car. So, but there were people that were critical of that. Um, it's just phenomenal, the technology difference from today and what's the standard today versus what it was. And I've been very blessed to be able to, uh, over my career, think out of the box, adapt to technology, because honestly, it's my friend. and we can do better with things. It helps us. Now, sometimes it's a pain in the butt. I'll just be brutally honest, but most of the time it helps us. Um, the drones today, we've got an outdoor drone with FLIR on it, so it's forward-looking infrared imaging, so it picks up body heat. So if we have an older Alzheimer's person that's missing or a child, we can get in an area quick. We can start searching instantly with that drone. It's huge, and we're also working on a drone to first responder program. So it will be perched on a rooftop, and as soon as a shots fired or a high priority call is given out, it will respond to that area and be overwatch while officers are responding. So there's some really neat things uh, that we didn't have back then that we have today, and I've been very blessed to be able to see that. On this case, the cell phone dumps and the downloads that we did were state of the art then, thanks to the Attorney General's office and the guy that did it for us. He's a rock star, and I appreciate that so much because it truly helped us. And then working with our other partners like the postal inspector, the AG's office, ATF, and that was all big. And then the other agencies that helped us in some of these other counties where we wind up doing investigations and the other things that happened there. But technology helps you every day. Even from the reporting system today, how much easier it is to track and update your cases and do all those things. Um,
Well,
and then the media, the crisis management, the communications management part of it, and honestly, the project management of or case management in our terms. It's, you modify, you learn things differently, and you adapt and overcome. Uh, some pretty neat stuff in our new sheriff's office that we got when I was sheriff. We did an interview in an interview room, and my vision for that room was to partner with the Bluegrass Child Advocacy Center. So if we had a child abuse case or a child sexual case, we'd have to take them to Lexington to the Bluegrass Child Advocacy Center for the interview, and it'd be recorded there. So I'd lose basically a deputy or a detective for most of the day to go there. So we opened it up and invited them and did a partnership with them to come to our place and do it. And sure enough, we did that. And so we had all our surrounding agencies were able to come to our office, and the Bluegrass Child Advocacy was there, and they do their interviews there. Saved everybody else time. It saved taxpayer money, and it was more efficient for us to do that. So my guys were able to get back on the road or work instead of driving back and forth, 45 minutes to Lexington and back, drive time to the Bluegrass Child Advocacy Center. And we had state of the art camera system put in. We developed our own training room, and we had huge TV screens in there with a media center, which is state of the art. And we started hosting trainings. The more trainings I hosted, the more my men and women could get free training, and the more efficient they were and the better they were. And we hosted, and several agencies would come. When those agencies would come to Franklin County to our office for training for the week, some of them would have to come from out of state. They'd get rooms, they'd buy gas, they'd buy food. It helped perk the economy. If you had 30 or 35 men or women from around the state coming to Frankfurt for training. So I always thought a little differently, and I always looked at the big picture of our community and what was best for it. Uh, so I'm
so
different.
so there is
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
there is one thing though, and that is that if you had been investigating this case today, you wouldn't have all those artifacts and that giant file of case information because it would all be on a thumb drive.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
most of it,
So
but everything is due to the national reporting system, to the FBI. The NIVERS is the standard, the national standard that everybody uses for the case. It's standard format. Uh, so all that stuff. Once an officer or deputy does that, it gets transmitted to the supervisor for report approval, where it's scrutinized, and then it goes to state police repository for records, and then electronically comes back after it's approved and it's downloaded. So it's always available. And then there's like part of this is you can go in. We've got e-citation, there's e-crisis. One of the things that I'm doing now, I'm also teaching law enforcement in crisis intervention team. So the mental health stuff, it's the highest emerging liability in law enforcement right now. I got Georgetown sent me to instructor school. Asked me how long it's been since I've cited a source. A long time, a long time. And it was an 80-hour class in Richmond at the Department of Criminal Justice Training. Tough course. I was in there with a bunch of young people and the up and coming brightest of their agencies. I was very humbled to be able to do that. But I'm teaching that class now, 1 and 2, uh, uh, crisis crisis intervention team across the Commonwealth. And Georgetown lets me do that, and it's huge because it's something that I use every day in talking with people. And back in the day, somebody was having a mental breakdown or whatever, and the old days you charge them with disorderly and you take them to jail. Well, today being able to recognize that, talk to them, makes a difference. So technology, training, adapting. Our training is evolving. It's always evolving, and we're getting better. Just like going to technology. You asked about technology, optics on our rifles, optics on our pistols. I'm old school, so I'm iron sight. I was an iron sight kind of guy. We switched to a red dot on our pistols, and holy cow, what a game changer! So the technology changes, and it's constantly evolving for us, and we learn something every day. The way we used to do things has changed. The way case management has changed in some sense of the form with technology today, and the way you do things. And that's always something significant that changes and evolves. And you got to be able to evolve and look. And a good leader uh, exploits the strengths of his men and women. And I did. Let me tell you, I wanted to exploit because I wanted you to excel, and if you looked good, I looked good, and and if you looked bad, I'm the one that took the hit. I'm the one that took the blame because ultimately the buck stops with me. I didn't do everything perfect. I made mistakes, but I've also learned that if you don't do anything, you don't make any mistakes. So you can't be afraid of that. But if I made a mistake, it was an honest mistake. And while I was sheriff, every penny was accounted for. And so ask me some tough questions, you guys. I'm gonna
All
put
right.
you all on the
So,
spot now.
so
Inquiring minds want to
I
know.
know, I know that there's at least 2 or 3 documentaries about this whole Pappygate case. As the person who lived through it, who saw everything firsthand, where would you, without giving specific plugs or anything like that, where would you recommend our audience would look for factual, or if they want the dramatized version, to go get the dramatized version of the case?
The dramatized version, I'll give you that first, is on Netflix, and it you would think a documentary is factual. The dramatized version is on Netflix, and it's called The Bourbon King, and it's a 2 part.
Mhm.
It's called The Heist, and then under The Heist, it's called The Bourbon King, and there's 2 parts. And just to be blunt, they glorify the bad guy in each of the
That
3 parts of The Heist. So,
Toby
um,
is the center of that show or that
yeah.
series.
And then I did one January of this year with Moonshiners, Discovery Channel, and it's called True Crime and Shine, Pappygate. And I'll be honest, very factual. They tell the story, and they did a phenomenal job. I was very impressed with how they did it, and I was impressed with the whole thing. I mean, they really did a good job, and I would recommend if you want the factual part of it. Um, that's probably, in my opinion, they did a really good job. But again, those are my opinions. You may feel differently. You may think differently. That's up to you. You come to the
So,
conclusion.
so for our audience, if you've listened this far, you're going to get a treat because I've talked the sheriff into coming back in a few months, coming back on the show. And what we're going to do is we're going to put in the comment section or in the show notes how to submit a question to the sheriff. And then we're going to have an episode where he answers audience questions, all the things that we didn't cover that you might want to know. What's his favorite color? How you can, any. I will be very candid, and I will say they will be screened by by all three of us, myself and the sheriff, because there are questions that he is, even though he's retired, there are questions he's allowed to answer, and there are things that he's not allowed to answer. But if you look in the show notes, you'll find a link to where to go to submit your questions, and then we'll publicize it again that he's going to be coming on, and he's going to be answering your questions, because he put a lot of information out. He's very generous and very kind with his time. And, he said off camera, he said he didn't talk about this for well over a decade, or for almost a decade. And he decided it's time now to kind of bring this out, tell his story, tell everything that he wants to share about it, that he can share. And he's kind enough to be giving Two Disgruntled PMs the exclusive on it, and to come back to us, because apparently he likes me for some reason. And to come back and share again. And because we're ending this, I'll call it a series, I'll put a bow on this episode and this series with asking you the same question that we ask every guest that comes on the show. So, did you want to say something?
Come and join the channel, like and subscribe. Not every day you get to ask the questions, and I believe that is part of transparency. Trevor, you did put the caveat. There are some things I can discuss. There are some things that I cannot discuss. But I am willing to answer whatever you got. Ask me. I have nothing to hide. I want you to know. I want to answer everything I can, and will. And subscribe to the channel. I've not done this. I did the Discovery thing in January. Other than that, the Netflix thing was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was. And I haven't done anything. I've kind of laid low on it. And Trevor was kind enough to ask. And I think the project management side, the Two Disgruntled project managers, this ties in because it truly was juggling case management and project management through being sheriff, running an office, doing this investigation, working with my men and women, making sure they had what they need, and still serving the public and making sure that we were answering the calls for service, making the domestic runs, making all those runs and doing those things. And, I was honored. Trevor and I just kind of clicked. I thought he was a great guy, and it's something I wanted to do. And I'm glad I did it. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see your reaction and get the response from our viewers for this show and the other one, part 1 and part 2. And I think the Q&A will be a fun time too. We'll enjoy it.
Well, we still have the guest question that you have to answer.
I got it. Yep. I'm down.
All right. So I'm going to paint a picture for you, because you're of an age where this won't date me.
He just called me old. He just called me old. Trevor, you just called me old, didn't you?
Well, you're sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon, flipping through channels. What movie comes on that you're like, I'll just watch it till the next commercial, and then an hour later you're still watching the movie even with commercials?
I'm going to be totally honest. There was a series on that I never thought that I would ever like. Not even a little bit. The Walking Dead.
What?
The Walking Dead. And here's why. It's not about the zombies. It's about leadership. It's about survival. It's reimagining what normalcy is. It's about getting food. It's about getting water. It's about keeping your family alive, keeping your friends alive, and meeting up with honorable people. And there's bad guys out there, and then you got to worry about the zombies eating you. It was a series that I never ever thought that I would ever get into. Not that that's not something you say, "Hey Pat, what do you like?" But that's probably one of them. I liked what it was about. I also love Top Gun.
There you go.
1 and 2. And then
All
I've
right.
gotten into Reacher too. Reacher's been really good.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are my top three.
All
That
right.
oh Linus as well. Sorry, Linus.
Okay. Okay.
But that I'm out. That I'm done.
so so we'll wrap it up there. Check the show notes for where to submit your questions to Sheriff Melton, and like and subscribe to all of our stuff. Sheriff, did you have anything that you wanted to plug to the audience or put out there?
I'll just thank you guys for having me. This has been fun. I'm glad to be a part of it. I'm so glad you asked, and this has been fun, and I've enjoyed every second of it. Can't wait for the Q&A. I think that's going to be fun, and we'll have a good time with that too. And let's have fun.
And let this be a lesson to our audience too. If you have an opportunity, always ask, because all it took was me pulling the sheriff aside for a moment after he was speaking at the event that I was at. And I said, this was right after this event that I was at was, I don't even know if the show had even launched yet. We were, this is how long this has been in the works. But I just asked him, I'm like, hey, I've got this show. I'm co-hosting the show. This is what it's about. Would you mind coming on and telling the story? And not even knowing that he doesn't do a lot of public speaking. He hasn't really surfaced on this in almost a decade. And without hesitation, he said, absolutely, love to do it. But my point in all of this is always ask if it's something that you want. Don't ever say, I'm nobody, or why would they want to do this? Because, I become friends with the sheriff too. It's one of those, you never know unless you ask. And you never know what opportunities are going to present themselves if you don't just ask the question and step out on a limb there. Because what's the worst that he could have said was, no thanks, don't want to do a podcast. And then I get a great story of at least I got to see him speak.
This is the first podcast ever, so I've never done one. This is the first one. I'm also open to bookings for public speaking or speaking to companies or corporate events. I did some things with operational organizational change. So, why do employees leave employers? Most times because their employers are bad. But also sometimes our employees are bad. But so I've got a couple of different topics that I speak on. So I am open to coming and doing some of that as well. So if you want a has been sheriff, uh, I'm more than happy to work with you to see if we can make that arrangement and make that work.
And what we'll do to kind of help facilitate that, we'll put in the show notes where to reach out to us, and then we'll pass the information along to the sheriff just so his inbox doesn't get inundated with fan mail and random questions and things like that.
Sounds good.
So for Sheriff Pat Melton, mail your deliverables be on time, your budget's in the black, and your scope not creeping. I'm still Trevor.